Lord, may we serve you all our days, ever rejoice to sing your praise, as we together your wisdom seek. Charge us with truth whenever we speak. Lord, may we ever know your will. Come to us when our hearts are still, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve.
This week's reading is "The law is perfected in love." Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, we read, "The law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ." Grace means the power to rise spiritually. Truth means the experience of divine realities, not the application in the outer world of that inner experience. Divine love is the soul's experience of oneness with God. Kindness is the human manifestation of that love. Grace is deeper than mere kindness. Wisdom is a divine experience. Justice to all is a human law, though divinely inspired. It follows as a consequence of the experience of wisdom. Truth goes deeper than mere justice. While following the law, we should strive always to trace it back to its origins in the vision of God. Therefore, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita urges the devotee not to be satisfied with spiritual precepts alone, but to go beyond them to the direct inner experience of truth. In the 18th chapter of that great scripture, he says, "Nay, but once more take my last word, my utmost meaning have. Precious thou art to me, right well beloved. Listen, I tell thee for thy comfort this, give me thy heart. Adore me, serve me, cling in faith and love and reverence to me, so shalt thou come to me. I promise true, for thou art sweet to me, and let go those right and writ duties. Fly to me alone, make me thy single refuge. I will free thy soul from all its sins. Be of good cheer." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. And from Whispers from Eternity, burn thou my frailties in the furnace of trials. In the furnace of trials, the ore of my life is being purified. The fire of experience melts away all my delusions' dross. O divine artisan, burn away all my impurities, bringing out in me the steel of endurance, and hone it to a fine edge by deep calmness. Forge in me from the tempered steel of mental balance sharp swords of self-control and firm tenacity. With the weapon of inner equilibrium, teach me to fight every enemy of distraction. So as I mentioned earlier, as most of you know, today is Valentine's Day, and there is a very very much a sweetness to it, because whether you have an outward Valentine or not, God is your Valentine today and every day. And though that may, sound sweet and obvious to some of you, if it does, I'm glad. But it isn't always obvious. In fact, it's something that was helping me when I first came on the spiritual path. I was speaking to a friend who I had gone to for some advice, and I had been meeting with her regularly when I was a student in college. And at one point, I was feeling a lot of help from her. I was feeling a lot of growth, a deeper understanding, more calmness, greater. I felt like I was cleaning out the mental closet of all cobwebs and skeletons and so on. She was very insightful and helped me to. She was much older than I. She was an adult and wise in these ways. But she was helping me see, sort of lighting up the dark corners of my mind and trying to expose wrong thinking in a kind way so that I could heal. So I was very much enjoying it. But I came to a point where I just hit sort of, not rock bottom, but I should say I hit a ceiling. That's maybe a better image. I was rising, and then I just hit this ceiling where I couldn't quite go beyond it. I sort of felt like, we figured out all this stuff about my personality, but there's still something more, and I felt a deep hurt in my heart that I couldn't explain. What was missing? And so she said, I want you to do an experiment. I want you to go home and I want you to think about what is the worst outcome you could imagine for yourself in 10 years. So 10 years from now, what is it that you would be, what's the thing you would least like to experience? What would you be most afraid of experiencing 10 years from now? And it wasn't like, well, what if aliens abducted me 10 years from now? It's like, they could abduct you now, they could abduct you in 11 years. What does 10 years have to do anything? It means basically if the trajectory of your life continued in a certain direction, what would be a difficult outcome 10 years from now? A theme, a tendency, that kind of thing. So I went home and I thought about it, and I came back to her and I said, in 10 years, I would not like to be alone. And then I said, no, wait a minute, that's not exactly right. In 10 years, I would not like to be lonely. Because you can be alone, but not lonely. But I would not like to be lonely. And she said, yes, very good, very good. I said, because I live for love. And she said, yes, that's right. And I said, because love, with another person is the ultimate fulfillment. And she said, And I said, it is the effortless merging of souls, and it is the dancing through endless meadows of joy and bliss and so on. She said, wait. She said, that love you're describing, you will never find on earth. She said, what the love you're describing is divine love. And I was not open to God, and basically until that moment. So at that point, I was so tempted, because I wasn't interested in God, and here she's saying divine love, that every part of me was saying, okay, time out, that's enough, none of this God stuff, pakalam. But I also realized from that inexplicable hurt in my heart earlier, and this ceiling that I couldn't penetrate, I couldn't somehow get any happier than I was, and I couldn't get rid of this sadness that I didn't understand, that I must be missing something. I must be missing something. I must have some blind spot, some sort of piece of the puzzle, crucial piece, fundamental, that I wasn't getting. And by definition, I didn't know what it was. So if someone offered something, I shouldn't just say, no, that's not it. Maybe it is that. And so I said, well, let me see. Maybe. She's been right about everything else so far. Maybe now that we're taking this leap into God, okay, maybe she's right. And that was the same week that I received Autobiography of a Yogi. It was like Master had worked to pry my little heart open just enough to get his foot in the door, and then stuck the book in through the slot, the space in the door. And I grabbed the book, and then that was it for me. But the point of it is that I had been wanting that love, but I wasn't alone. Everybody wants love on one level. I smile though, because I'm reminded, if I make this broad claim that everyone wants love, I remember Nayaswami Haridas was once asked in a sort of public lecture, "What is love?" And so Haridas Ji explained it a little bit. I mean, he said, well, love is, I don't even remember what he said. But he said, of course, after all, it's a stupid question, because we all know what love is. And I thought, because Haridas does not have the tendency to tell someone it's a stupid question. But what he meant was just, look, if you have a heart, you know what love is. And everybody has a heart. Everybody seems to be breathing still and, more or less awake. But if you have a heart, you might not be able to feel what's in your heart for various reasons. That's okay. We can work with that. But we know what love is. So anyway, it's the same. So I feel rather confident in saying everybody wants love. But we can seek it in the wrong way. We can seek love through people. And I don't mean that we should be less loving to others, or we should say, that's it, I'm headed off to the caves, and that I'm done with all this. Because it is through, Master said, you can't win the love of God if you haven't won the love of man. So in other words, if we're trying to be spiritual and then saying, I love God, shh, I'm praying to my beloved, be quiet. We can't be unloving to others and think that somehow we're being loving to God. After all, I'm not seeking love through them. Now why? Why do I say that? One is because it's a teaching. Master just gave it as a teaching. So meaning, what if we resist that thought? No, I can be rude to everyone, it's fine. Well, Master said don't be. So there's that one part of the teaching. But the other is, the more you love, the more you can't help but be kind to other people, because you're feeling kindness in your heart. It's your nature to be that way. And it becomes your nature. That, once you learn to be loving, we move through this difficulty of all these misunderstandings and impurities and ignorance, and finally we become clean enough to be loving. It's not that way. We're loving to begin with. But then, because of hurts, because of disappointments, because of betrayals, we learn to protect our hearts. And then usually we protect our hearts by getting a nice piece of granite and then just stapling it right here so my heart will not get hurt anymore. So you see children, sometimes with some children, if you meet a child who you don't know, a small child, and you say hello, and for some miraculous reason they're not feeling shy, some children will just go, and you're thinking, you don't know me, you haven't checked my passport, you don't know anything about me, and yet you're just so open-hearted. But that is the child's open-hearted nature, and we were once children, I think, most of us. And so we were like that too. On the other hand, you do see some children they're shy, and that's fine, and then some children are afraid. As I mentioned to you before, I had a friend who was afraid of men with black leather boots. And it was a seemingly irrational fear. So what I'm saying, and I mentioned it, she found out and she believed that it was from a past life. Because children are not children, and adults are not adults. Adults are children, and children are adults. Swamiji was once asked by a little girl at a school, how old are you? And he was in his 70s at that point, and so it's funny, I don't know if she'd ever seen someone that old before. And so he said, well, let's put it this way. When I was your age, you were an old woman. And she said, oh, okay, makes sense. So you see, when we see these little children coming in, they're just the same as us. They just haven't had the same experience yet of this particular time on earth. They still have to learn about, Modi and, filtered water and computers and, in other words, sort of the jargon of this age. But they are just as much fully, there's no such thing as a baby soul. All souls are the same. And there's no such thing as a grown-up soul either. All souls are the same. Now, sometimes people use the phrase old soul, and that's fairly legitimate in the sense of someone who's been coming around a long time. But the soul, again, is ageless, so it isn't really an old soul. It is actually an old ego. And I don't mean that as a joke, even though anytime you say ego, it's Vaindam, ego Vaindam. But really, we're secretly also saying ego Vainum. I don't want the ego, but I do want the ego, because when we don't want the ego, we're free. So to the extent that we're not free, we're still holding on. And I don't say that in criticism, it's understandable, but also it's a reminder, why am I holding on? What am I holding on to? What am I afraid to let go of? Why am I afraid to let go? As it said in the affirmation, let go and be in God, and He will protect you. Not mindlessly, not, okay, God, protect me. Here I go, I'm walking into the TV. I hope you're going to protect me. Use your common sense. But when we offer ourselves in that way, everything works out much better. I should add also with meditation. Because when we meditate, we put ourselves in tune with the divine flow. Mental affirmation, positive thinking is not enough. Because we can't think uniformly with all of our thoughts in one direction. God, I really hope you'll protect me, but I'm kind of afraid you might not, like that other day when you said you would, but then bad things happened. Or, God, I really hope you will protect me, and, let's see, mango chutney. You see, there's just other useless thoughts that are just in the back, muttering and gurgling. And so in meditation, we focus ourselves, and that puts us in the divine flow. And it also gives you an easier experience of that, where when you meditate, the day goes better. Outwardly, even. Because you've dipped yourself into that divine flow. And when you don't, you find, gosh, everything was harder today. Or everything was normal, typical today. Then we meditate again, and then we find, I had a good day. It's not that you had a good day, it's the day had a good you. We put ourselves in a good mode, and then suddenly we're adding to the day. We're contributing to the positivity instead of just bumping around like everybody else. So, the other side of all of this, though, is that it is right and natural that we give love, that we seek to receive love. Everybody wants love, so the teaching is not don't want love, but it's seek God's love. Now, if you have a loving relationship with someone, you can see that it is God loving you through that person. And similarly, if you are in a loving relationship, you can love that person with God's love. Feel that God is loving that person through you. So two people are relating from the divine to each other rather than just to each other. Because when we just do this, it's ego to ego. And someone else's ego will always disappoint us. Well, how do we know? Because our ego disappoints us. Not them, yes, sure, but us. I mean, can we be reliable? Are we always our own best friend? Do we say nothing but encouraging positive things to ourselves all day long? I haven't met one who has. I mean, such an ego would probably get fired. How dare you be so positive and encouraging them towards God? Maya will come in and say, no. That's not the ego's job. What are you doing? So, the other thing to remember, though, is that the title of this, the law is perfected in love. The law, you could think, the law is perfected in compliance. It's okay. So at least I got a laugh from the accountant. He can understand. The law is perfected in perfection. Something. Just that the law is perfected when you follow it exactly correct and never make a mistake. Then the law is perfected. It's not true. It's not true at all. But it's tempting to think that way. Now why? Why do we get so rigid about the laws? And by laws, I'm not talking about, don't park your bicycle in front of the fire hydrant or whatever it is, like that. We have some fire hydrants. Do we have fire hydrants here? They exist somewhere? Maybe in Basement Nugget? No? Okay. All right. Don't park your car in front of someone's gate. Maybe that we can relate to better. Don't park your car in front of someone's gate. Okay. So the law is I don't mean those kinds of, don't park your car in front of someone's gate, but that's not what I'm talking about. The spiritual laws, religious laws, even laws of protocol, even laws of culture, which is to say customs, guidelines, all these things, we can get into a point of getting rigid about it in the sense that following this law means I'm good. And not following this law means I'm bad. First of all, remember, God watches the heart. It's more the intention that we have than what our outer behavior is. Outer behavior is a good first step, and that's why we get rigid about the laws. In the first stages of life, whether it's our youth or it's our earlier incarnations, we don't know that there are laws. So we live in all kinds of wrong ways, eating whatever we want to do, going around and going, hey, get out of my way, pah! And then, hey, you, get out of my way, pah! And then no one's in your way. In fact, no one's near you at all. And then suddenly, we suddenly no more friends. No one wants to be around us. How did that happen? So we start to learn that by criticizing other people, you know what your problem is? You must not know. I do know what your problem is. If you knew what your problem was, you wouldn't have the problem. So let me help you by informing you about what your problem is. I'm just trying to help. Doesn't work. And if you don't believe me, try it. Maybe try it on, a deaf person or something. To try it. But you just try it. And then you find, again, all alone. How did that happen? So, we realize even just to follow the laws outwardly without even meaning it. Just, we learn how to say something like, I really love what you're doing. I think it's great. I really see this, wonderful effort that you made to make this whole thing. I wonder, I have one question about this thing. Did you intend for it to go this way? Is that what you meant? Even if we don't mean anything like that. We mean, hey, by the way, that's terrible. But we learn that when we say that, then everybody runs. So we learn how to say, everything's great. Just one little question. As Jayaji said, as being a builder, he has the ability to just see in any kind of building what's wrong with it. And he said, that's not necessarily a blessing. It's not necessarily a good thing to have your eye go to the defect. But he was going into a building project that a friend of his was making, and his friend said, listen, I really want your feedback. No, I really want your advice. I really want your advice on how things are going. And so Jayaji came in, and then he said, do you want my advice, or do you want my support? And his friend thought about it and said, I want your support. And so Jayaji said, it's wonderful, look at it, great job, excellent, did this thing. Maybe there's one thing you might want to think about. One person who was a singing coach told me that when he could hear in someone's voice, he could hear 15 things they needed to correct. And he would maybe mention half of one. Because the thing you need most of all as a beginning singer or anybody is confidence. And so if somebody's just poking holes and these are all the things you're doing wrong, it doesn't mean they don't see them. But they know that if you get confident enough, 80% of the things will get fixed. Because you'll be doing it right. Because you won't be tripping over yourself. So this problem, they all go away. It isn't that you learned, okay, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, do this, and so on. And so similarly, when we're trying to help other people, rather than criticize, try to find ways to encourage. And half the time, 90% of the time, we can fix everything by just cheering up. As it says, as Krishna says, be of good cheer. Just be cheerful, and it makes everything better. Find a way to be cheerful. Find why we're not cheerful, and so on. And then fix it. So we get rigid about the law, as I said, because once we discover there's a law, if I behave this way, then that happens. If I stop doing this, a good thing happens. If I follow the rules, then other people will follow the rules. That's our agreement. I behaved properly. I was kind to you. Now you must be kind to me. That's the deal. And then we get rigid about the rules because people break the rules. We notice that. You're not following the rules. You're breaking the agreement. We had a deal. I smile at you in the morning. You smile at me in the morning. Okay? Hey, where's my smile? I smiled at you. Where's my smile? And then, you know what it's like when we see other people breaking the rules and saying you're breaking the rules? It's just like a little kid saying, it's not fair! That's the theme you hear all from little kids. It's not fair. And that's all we're doing, saying to God, it's not fair. When you see a little kid say that, you think, well, life isn't always fair. It is, actually. If you could see the karma, it is fair. It's completely fair. So when we're being wronged, just remember, it's just karma. Even if it's from that person, they are just the vehicle for our karma. If they were doing something to us that was not our karma, but they were able to do it to us anyway, even though it wasn't our karma, then they would be more powerful than God. And they aren't. You see, it's just their vehicles for our understanding. That's why I read that Whispers from Eternity, purify me in the fire of trials. God is giving us tests for purification. Why? Because we are impure? No. That's irrelevant. He's not saying, there's all these impure people around. Here, come to the fire. Get purified. No, he's saying, because you will be happier. Out of my love for you, you will be happier when you don't have this problem. Think of a problem you had before. Like suppose you say, you would always interrupt people while they're speaking. Maybe I'm just speaking a little too personally. For myself. Interrupt. Yeah, that's great. You couldn't let anybody get a word out because I had to say something. It could even just be out of enthusiasm. That's a great idea. Let me tell you something even better. It's just like... Then we learn by meditating that we can listen to people. That we have more self-control. That, go ahead. No, keep going. And we find that when we listen to people, a number of things happen. First of all, they smile a lot more than they used to when we were around. We also find that, sometimes they have good ideas, things that we weren't talking about. But more than all, we feel a relaxation in not always trying to assert our ego. There's just a relaxation in being in the flow, in allowing the other person their space to be apart together, working together, rather than just, I'm always jumping in front. We think we'll feel more relaxed by jumping in front of the microphone, but we find that we're not. And so this same kind of thing naturally helps us to be more loving. In fact, a friend of mine I was talking to, Nayaswami Bharat in Ananda Village, many of you know him. I was telling him about a certain person who was giving training to people. And this person was training everybody in the following way, saying, this is correct, this is incorrect. And it was something I don't want to go into the details, but it was a certain situation where, like cooking, it wasn't cooking. But it's like cooking where this is the way you slice the vengayam. Anything else is wrong. And in a situation like cooking, you know that, there's room for interpretation. There are styles, there's personal creativity, there's whatever, and so on. And so he said, when hearing about how critical and corrective this person was and saying, this is the way, that is wrong. That he said, that doesn't show very much love. And I said, love? What do you mean by that? He said, when we love people, we naturally love and support them in the way that they are. We're not trying to convert everybody into us. When someone says that is the wrong way, mostly what they're saying is that is not my way. That's all. That's it's really all there is. So we have to watch that in other people. If someone says you're wrong, probably what they're saying is what you're doing is not what I would do. And then on the other hand, if we say, gosh, they're always saying I'm wrong. They're always saying I'm wrong. I can't believe how they always say I'm wrong. Ah! Well, but that's what we're saying. We're saying they're wrong. They're wrong to say I'm wrong. And so now we're saying they're wrong. Why? Because I wouldn't criticize someone like that. Well, but we're criticizing them for criticizing. See, it's like it makes sense. It is understandable that if we figured something out, the first stage of understanding, and that's how I felt towards this person in the cooking class, the non-cooking class. That's how I felt, because I realized, instead of saying, ha, you have no love, I realized I too had been at a point in my understanding where when I finally figured out how to do something, I thought that was the way. What I found was that was the way for me. And that was the way for me right now. And so then I naturally, in my enthusiasm, tried to tell people, oh, but this is the way. Listen, I figured it out. I can save you a lot of trouble. Do it this way, the right way. And then I learned over time that somebody will do it in the exact opposite way. Someone will find a way of, for example, doing something backwards and upside down, but it will still work. And that is their way. And that's okay. And so I looked at this person in the cooking class, teaching the non-cooking class, and I said, I understand where that person is coming from. I used to think like that too. And I did, and it helped me actually let go of the situation. So we find relief in understanding where someone else is coming from. In fact, Swamiji defined maturity as the increasing ability to relate to other people's realities. You see, that's often the thing about what makes children more mature, is they're able to see beyond their own needs and their own situation and allow for others. So it's the same thing with the mature adults. Remember, maturity does not come automatically by the number of years you've logged on Earth, by any means. Nor is it limited by the number of years. You can be a very old soul in a young body, and you can be a very young soul in an old body, and so on. One woman said to her son, who was on the spiritual path as she was dying, she said, I always thought that as I grew older, I would grow wiser. But I didn't. And in a way, it was a very wise thing to say, that she recognized that learning doesn't come automatically. So, just to finish this thought, we get rigid about the law. If people are rigid with us about the law, Om Triambakam! Om Triambakam, no! Triambakam! Triambakam, no! Triambakam! Triambakam, no! Maybe I'm just explaining my own experience in learning new languages. Is that there's a rigidity because of this sense of I know how to do it right, and this is how I can keep it together if I follow the rules. So don't worry if people are rigid, but grow beyond that rigidity. The law is perfected in love. In love, you know when to apply the law and when not to apply the law. You know when someone does need to be disciplined, again in love, and when they don't be. And 99% of the time, they don't need to be disciplined. Because why? Because life disciplines for you. And also God is doing the job of being the policeman. So we don't really have to be the police. But it doesn't mean we're pushovers. It doesn't mean we don't draw a strong boundary when it's necessary, but still with love. When you have to be strong with a child, be sure that in your heart, as much as possible, there's love, calmness, and patience. Then you can say whatever you want. But if there's irritation and anger, and you speak, they'll hear that. And when I say a child, I mean anyone under the age of 160. It's the same thing. If you're a leader, if you're a teacher, you speak with anger. People will, if you're a boss, people will hear that. And if nothing else, they'll lose respect. Because they're looking to you. I was a boss once in a situation, and Acharya Nayaswami Haridas, he was Acharya Haridas at the time, that's why I was thinking that. Nayaswami Haridas said to me, right now, you're the captain of the ship. And everybody in the storm is turning to look back at the guy at the wheel to see if he's calm. Not smart, not fully competent, not having all the answers, not doing everything, but calm. That's what people are relying on you to be, is calm. And so I went, can you say that again? I'm joking. Still, I went, okay, that's how I felt inside. Okay, calm first. So, remember lastly Jesus' beautiful words in the Bible. To he who loves much, much is forgiven. The law is perfected in love. If you have violated the law in all these different ways, but you have love, all of those different mistakes are forgiven. And what does that mean from a yogic point of view? He was speaking from a yogic point of view, but what does it mean? It means you may have all this karma, bad karma, from mistakes, but with love, it just gets melted away, taken away, whether through Kriya practice, whether through devotion to the Guru, and so on. So we come to the point on the spiritual life, in the spiritual path rather, where we say, okay, Guruji, you help me. You take this away. You teach me. I'm open. I want to learn. But also, I just want God. And I don't want to have to go through all these steps and processes and figure it all out, because I can't. You finally figure out one thing. For example, we want to feel more joy. So we meditate. We find our hearts automatically open. And then suddenly, we're angry. Why? It's so common. People even come on after a week of meditating saying, you know, I'm a lot more upset than I used to be. Can I have my money back? Why does that happen? Because again, the granite is over the heart. This. And when we meditate, we take the granite down. And at first we feel that relief and that joy of having an open heart again. And then someone comes along and goes, bah! Right here. And we go, oh, that's what the granite was for. That's why I had it there, because you're always mean. And so we realize that even though that sort of works, it doesn't work forever. You can't choke your heart and live very long or live very happily. And so the first step in opening your heart is also risking that you might feel hurt again. But the real strength comes from opening your heart wide enough and strong enough that you're not worried so much about how we're not worried about how they treat us. If you don't like me, if you're critical of me, it's really your problem. As Master said, I am what I am before my conscience and God. Not according to your opinion, not according to your criticism. But at the same time, be kind to people. Don't shut them out of your heart that way either. Understand where they're coming from. And even if they're misbehaving, if nothing else, remember how many times we have misbehaved. So just be patient. I'm paying off some karmic debts. Ooh, there goes another one. There's another one. Okay, I think maybe one more and that's it. And so just try that way. But if nothing else, remember God is the nearest and dearest friend of all. He's always your friend. The Guru is always on your side. Always on your side, rooting for you, cheering you on, helping you. He's on your side alone. Even if you're in a fight with another disciple, he's on their side and your side. He's always on your side. No one can really do that. No one can be that way except a divine being. And so be grateful for the divine Guru that you have, and be with him more. So now we'll have our discipleship ceremony.